Hello and welcome to another My Indie Marriage video. In this video I want to discuss 5 things a person on the spectrum should know or consider before going into a relationship. And not just going into the relationship, but once you're in the relationship. These are a couple of things to consider. Number 1, your outbursts, aka meltdowns, are not the other person's fault or responsibility. They're yours. When you start to get angry and feel overwhelmed and heated and you start to say things you shouldn't say and all of that kind of stuff, it is 100% up to you to calm yourself down and to realize that the other person isn't the cause of your outburst. And sure, you might be triggered by something they did. For example, the other day, the dishwasher wasn't emptied and hubby was triggered. Now, he had a few words to say about that, but he didn't get crazy about it, unlike in the past where he would have got crazy about it. So, from that perspective, it may seem that we are the fault for leaving the dishwasher not put away. Yet he's responsible for how he reacts to that situation. He can calmly say, "Can somebody please put the dishes away?" He does not need to have a complete meltdown full of rage and anger. And I don't know how your outbursts go, whether they're full of rage or anger or other things, but either way, they're your responsibility to handle your reaction. Number 2, it's not all better your way. And it's not all about your wants and your needs. There is another person in the relationship, they have wants and needs too, and it is about compromise. My hubby and I have struggled with compromise. So for example, in my previous video where I talked about his special interests, which was exorbitant amounts of TV watching, there was no compromise on his part. So it wasn't a case of him watching exorbitant amounts of TV for a week and then saying, "You get half an hour of my time on a Sunday." That would have been a compromise. So yeah, you have to learn to compromise, you have to learn to give and take. It cannot just be all a one-way street. My hubby definitely had the motto of his way or the highway, and that just doesn't work in a relationship. The other person who never gets their way ends up filled with resentment. And the irony is that he thought that he wasn't getting his way ever. He kept saying, "He never wins, I always win." And yet he didn't want to compromise and I had to do everything his way. So it was really strange how he saw it. And that did make compromising even harder. But it is a compromise. It cannot just be all one way and that's it. Number 3, your partner is not supposed to be doing it all or even the majority. Your partner is not your maid. She is not your servant, she is not your carer, she's not your mum. If you went into a relationship because you wanted somebody to do everything for you, you probably shouldn't be going into a relationship. You probably should be going into a care facility or staying with your parents. If you're not able to look after yourself, you can't then place that on a wife. That's not the wife's role. Yes, husbands and wives do take care of each other and they do try to meet each other's needs and build each other up and support each other and things like this. But it really isn't your partner's job. I say wife, but it can be a husband as well. It's not your neurotypical wife or husband's job to mother you, to look after you and to do everything for you. If you can't cook, learn to do the washing. If you can't do the washing, learn to vacuum. It has to be that way. It has to be give and take. And you've gone into that relationship open eyes, knowing that you have to help out as well. Number 4, They're your kids too. And maybe you don't have kids, maybe you have pets. They're your pets as well, I suppose. You should be looking after them. But this is fundamentally for those who have children with their partners. They are your children as well. They are your responsibility. If you don't want children, you should be upfront saying, I have no desire to have children. I don't want to look after them. The mere thought of having them fills me with dread. And that's your prerogative. Not everybody enjoys children. Not everybody likes having them around. Not everybody likes doing bath time and bedtime stories. They're hard work, children. So if you don't want children, you should be saying up front, I don't want children. And if you do have children, because you weren't up front and you didn't say you didn't want them, you have to help out. You cannot leave it to the other person. And in saying that, it's probably a really good idea to follow your partner's lead, because maybe you don't know how to care for children very well. You're not very good at it. It's not your forte. You want to be their friend instead of their parent, or you want to kind of just ignore and neglect them. That can't be how it rolls. You have to support each other. You have to have each other's backs. You have to help each other out. If your wife, for example, says their bedtime is 7:30, then you should be putting them in bed at 7:30 instead of keeping them up until 9, until she comes along and says, hey, their children's bedtime was hours ago. Not basing that off any real life experience whatsoever. Totally am. Anyway, so yes, children, they're your responsibility too. Number 5, don't assume you know best, or you know everything, or you know her meaning, or his meaning. You cannot read minds any more than I always hear autistic people saying, I'm not a mind reader. You can't read somebody's mind. You cannot know what they're thinking, and you cannot know everything. I know there are a lot of know-it-alls out there, and probably even neurotypical know-it-alls. It wouldn't probably be an autistic trait specifically, but you don't know everything. You couldn't possibly know everything. Have you heard the saying where you don't know what it is you don't know? Well, you don't know what it is that you don't know. And if you don't listen to your partner's input and take in the knowledge that they're bringing to the relationship, then again, maybe you should rethink being in a relationship, because it is meant to be a compromise. It's meant to be teamwork. It's meant to be the two of you working together to run a house. It cannot just be that your opinion is the only one that matters. And if you have situations where you think your partner meant something by something that they said, and you get defensive or irate about that, you might want to take a step back and ask questions. This is something my son and I do. So I might say something and he'll say to me, were you trying to be offensive then? And then I'll explain my meaning behind what I said. Or I'll say to him, was that meant to be a joke? And then he'll explain to me what his meaning was behind what he said. So we're really quite direct with each other if we misunderstand or not sure that we understand what the meaning was behind what was said. And that's mainly because he can speak quite bluntly. It's very just matter of fact. And because he's matter of fact, I'm matter of fact. But that doesn't mean that we get each other's matter of fact. So we will ask those questions. And in the beginning, my hubby thought that he had all of the answers and that he knew how to run this ship. Those are his words, direct quote. And he didn't. And not only that, he wasn't taking into consideration all of the knowledge that I have and all of the things that I'm bringing to the table as well. And when we put our heads together and both come up with ideas and ways to work around things, ways to resolve things, which directions to take and things like that, it's certainly much better and more harmonious than one person being a dictator. And that's the thing, it's not a dictatorship, not even nearly. it's a marriage, and you have to treat it like your wife or your husband is your partner and your best friend. So that's my 5 tips. Let me know if you have anything that you'd like to add to these tips. I'm sure it's not very comprehensive, but it's just, I think, the main things that I think are important. Anyway, let me know your thoughts. Love to hear from you, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you found it helpful.